So when is an M not a real M? The answer obviously is when you put the M in front of a 3-digit number, not in front of a single-digit number. Putting things simply, the M Sport package that we've seen in a lot of BMW vehicles so far is really just an appearance and handling package. So it's a looks fast, handles good package. The BMW iS models have been a little bit of increased performance. Then we have the fully fledged M models like the M3, the M4, the M5, etc. Those have structural changes in addition to more power, better braking, better handling, etc. So we get some fender flares, sometimes we get carbon fiber bits added to the vehicle, more aluminum intensive construction, etc. The M Performance line, which is where BMW puts the regular old M logo in front of a 3-digit model number instead of just a single digit, is where BMW is giving you sort of a diet version of the M car. So whereas M Sport doesn't get you any additional power, we have 30 more horsepower than most of the versions of this 3-liter turbocharged engine, and where the other models don't get any braking enhancement, this vehicle gets M brakes all the way around. In addition to that, we also get the M adaptive suspension system in this vehicle, but we don't see the dual clutch M transmission. BMW's 1 Series was based on the E90 3 Series, but the 2 Series is more than just a renumbering of the 1 Series, even though it fills that same slot in the BMW lineup. This was actually co-developed with the current generation 3 Series and 4 Series. That means that at the moment BMW has 2 different coupes and 2 different convertibles based on that 3 Series. The difference is primarily size. The 2 Series is about 10 inches shorter than the BMW 4 Series. We also get different interior parts, so a slightly nicer interior in the BMW 4 Series, better materials, etc. Interestingly enough, because of that close relationship, this is only about 100 pounds lighter than a BMW 435i, and we have very similar rear seat room as well. In addition to being longer, the 2 Series is also wider than it was before, and I think it wears a slightly more attractive front end as well. The M235i does get standard HID headlamps, although the 228 does not. As you'd expect, being related to the 3 Series, we get essentially the same engines under the hood. Things start out with a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, but the model we're taking a look has BMW's 3-liter inline 6. Because this is an M Performance variant, we get more power than you find in most of the 3-liter turbocharged engines from BMW. So this is cranked up to 320 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. That's the same horsepower we saw in the outgoing 135iS, but a little bit more torque. Unlike the other BMW M sedans and coupes, you can get the M235i with all-wheel drive for $1,800 extra, and that actually improves your 0 to 60 time by 0.2 of a second. Now you should know that if you want the fastest M235i, that would be the all-wheel drive model with the 8-speed automatic. And I know that sounds odd because all-wheel drive saps performance and usually automatics do as well, but the automatic transmission has much more advantageous gear ratios. It can shift faster than I can, and as a result, it goes well under 5 seconds 0 to 60. The model that we're taking a look at is the base M235i. It's actually quite a nice interior for a base BMW. You'll notice that we do get the multi-way power adjustable seats with adjustable bolsters and adjustable thigh cushions for both the driver and the front passenger. We have more hard plastics than you'll find in the 3 and the 4 Series, although this is basically a variation on the 3 Series theme in terms of overall style. We don't get navigation standard, but we do get iDrive, so we get a slightly smaller control display, perched up high on the dashboard just like the 3 and the 4 Series. Very similar climate controls, radio controls. We have cup holders down here without a lid like you find in some of the other BMW models. Manual shifter, of course. Drive mode selector, Sport, Sport Plus, Comfort, and Eco Pro that controls the suspension as well. And then we get the iDrive controller for our model without navigation. Steering wheel is essentially the same as the rest of the BMW M Series models, except we don't get the M1 and M2 programs over here on the left side of the steering wheel. And the gauge cluster is a simple version of what you find in the 3 Series. If you get the model with navigation, then we get a slightly larger LCD. The front seats proved quite comfortable and provide a surprising amount of headroom. A nice feature in the M235i is that you can delete the sunroof to get a little bit more headroom back. However, headroom in the rear is pretty limited. The interesting thing about the 2 Series is that we have almost the same amount of interior room as we get in the BMW 4 Series. We do obviously lose a little bit, but it's not as much as you might think, and it's mostly back there in the back seat. That's because a large portion of the size difference between this and the 4 Series happens right back here in the cargo area. This is about 1 cubic foot larger than the BMW 1 Series used to be, but it's still not a terribly large trunk. You'll really notice it in the opening of the trunk right here. This is a 26-inch roller bag. I can't insert it in this direction. I do have to insert it in the flat direction. Then I can rotate it 90 degrees, and even when I do, that's as far as I can push it to the back. Everything really comes together for the 2 Series out on very small winding mountain roads like we're on right here. This is where the really quick steering ratio of the 2 Series has some excellent benefit. You get that solid rear-wheel drive feel there in the corners. The stability control system is very well programmed, so it kicks in early, but it kicks in very smoothly and almost imperceptibly unless you're doing something really wrong. It really makes easy work out of these really tight corners on the road that we're on here. And the dynamic suspension system, even though we're in sport mode, means that it's soaking up these bumps and giving us maximum adhesion with the tires without really feeling rough or overly harsh. The 2 Series really is the ultimate 3 Series coupe. This does not feel quite like the BMW 3 Series that some people wax poetic about, but it is as close as you can get in today's market. We obviously get electric power steering, and that saps some of the fun out of this car, but it doesn't sap quite as much as you might think. The M235i is really in its element out on narrow, winding mountain roads like we're on right here. This is an incredibly fun vehicle, and yes, this road is just about as narrow as it appears. But remember that roads in Europe are very narrow, and that's exactly what this vehicle was designed for. This has a very quick steering ratio. It's only about 2.2 turns lock to lock. This is very go-kart-like in terms of the feel. We also get this extraordinarily eager 3-liter turbocharged engine. It has an incredible amount of low-end torque. In fact, all 330 pound-feet of torque come on right around 1500 RPM, which is very low, and it stays on very late. It means that you can easily get going insane speeds in the M235i if you're not careful. Fortunately, however, this vehicle is very well braked. Thanks to the up-level brakes, stopping is excellent, fade resistance, very, very good. Actual stopping distances, I think, could be a little bit better because I would like slightly wider tires. Of course, BMW would tell you that that is exactly what the upcoming M2 is going to be for. Better handling, even better performance, everything will be taken to that next level. Now you should know that in the sport mode that we're in now, some of this engine noise is actually digital engine noise. So if I put this in comfort, for instance, get a lot less engine noise happening. That's because this is actually coming out of the car's speakers, not actually out of the tailpipe. The 6-speed manual transmission is an incredibly willing partner out on these winding mountain roads like this, but in the actual 0 to 60 times, I've been averaging about 5 seconds on my 0 to 60 runs, and you will get right around 4.6, 4.7 if you get the 8-speed automatic. It is a decent amount faster. That's because the 8-speed auto has different and more advantageous ratios, both for acceleration and for fuel economy, so you'll get better acceleration and better fuel economy with the automatic. Won't be quite as much fun, however. The manual transmission really is one of the defining features of this vehicle, not just because this actually has a manual and the Mercedes and the Audi don't, but because of the way this vehicle is designed. Even if the Audi or the Mercedes had a manual transmission, they'd have to have shifter linkage cables because they are front-wheel drive based vehicles. And this shifter goes right into the transmission. The transmission is right there under the center console, and as you can see, this shifter actually vibrates as the engine moves around in there, as the transmission engine are shifting around. You can really feel the engagement of the gear set in the transmission. As I'm moving this shifter around like that, you can actually feel the engagement. That's very different than any of those shifter linkage systems. Speaking of the shifter, this has an excellent feel. It's notchy, the engagement is very good, the throws are very short, and the clutch pedal has a very engaging feel to it overall. It's very linear, the engagement is very easy to identify, and of course this engine just loves to rev in any gear. It also sounds really great at its red line. Comparisons are extremely tricky with the M235i because there aren't very many other vehicles out there like this. This is a 4-seat, 2-door coupe or 2-door convertible, and there really isn't anything else out there along those lines. The Mercedes-Benz CLA 45 AMG and the Audi S3 are frequent comparisons with the M235i, but they're very different vehicles. They're all-wheel drive only, they're automatic transmission only, and they're front-wheel drive based. Now the CLA 45 AMG handles incredibly well, and it is lightning fast. It is actually faster than this M235i, but it doesn't feel the same out on the road. The CLA 45 AMG is also $3,000 to $5,000 more expensive than the M235i. It's not nearly as smooth out on the road either. Now Audi's S3 is a little bit less expensive. It's about $2,000 to $3,000 less expensive on the other side of the equation, but it doesn't handle as well as this vehicle either. Although I like the way the CLA 45 AMG handles out on the road, and I like the way the all-wheel drive version of the M235i handles out on the road, I would buy the rear-wheel drive version because it's that much more fun. After those two vehicles, we have two vehicles that are very, very different. We have the Audi RS3 wagon, which is a station wagon. It's also not sold in the United States at this time. If it were, I would expect it to be about $5,000 to $8,000 more expensive than the BMW. It is, however, faster. We then have the Porsche Cayman and the Porsche Cayman S. The Cayman is about $10,000 more expensive than this, but it's slower. And then the Cayman S is about $20,000 more expensive than this, and it is only a hair faster. Audi's S3 is a more practical commuter car, and my practical side would probably buy the S3 over the M235i. However, this is an awful lot more fun. And even though the 8-speed automatic transmission is faster than this, I suspect I'd probably buy the 6-speed manual. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes with thetruthaboutcars.com, and this is the 2015 BMW M235i. Go ahead and click that subscribe button at the top of your screen. Go over to thetruthaboutcars.com for news, reviews, and of course, the full written review on the M235i coming up soon. I'll see you next week.